Concordium Baker 85223 welcomes you to this summary of Holger Fischer's comments at the Web 3 Stronger Together conference. As Concordium's ecosystem manager, his insights from panel 6, focusing on the mainstream adoption of decentralized technologies, provide valuable perspectives. This summary distills key takeaways without requiring a full viewing of the panel discussion. Let's delve into Fischer's thought leadership, shaping both Concordium and the broader decentralized tech landscape, beginning with a brief introduction.
My name is Holger Fischer, and I work as an ecosystem manager at Concordium Research, which functions as an entity on top of the Concordium blockchain. And the Concordium blockchain is a layer 1 blockchain, like a lot of the others out there. We provide the underlying infrastructure for decentralized applications to be built upon, right? Both DeFi, metaverse, gaming, a lot within identity solutions, because we have a very unique selling point that is an identity layer. So before you have to enter into the Concordium blockchain, you actually have to be identified. But I will probably get into that somehow in some shape or form later in this discussion. My day-to-day work goes with managing the ecosystem, helping projects, partners, and infrastructure to connect, and then also be a part of scaling it and expanding it, right? So helping projects to somehow integrate or migrate, or if organizations want to include some blockchain elements in any of their processes, we also help them with that. So that is a short introduction from me.
After introducing himself, Holger Fischer delves into essential themes for blockchain adoption. He highlights the urgent need for legal clarity, robust frameworks, and the definition of participant rights and obligations in the blockchain ecosystem. Fischer also emphasizes the critical role of real-world utility in project acceptance and the importance of education to dispel prevalent confusion around technical jargon in the industry.
Legal clarity and legal certainty within this space is very important, right? Because, I mean, right now, as we're seeing over with the United States of America and the SEC and Gary Gensler, it's kind of like the Wild West. There's no legal clarity, there's no frameworks, there's no structure. It makes it difficult for adoption to happen because institutions won't really touch it. Retailers are running away a little bit scared. And I think it's very important that you provide these legal frameworks that outlines, I mean, both like stuff like rights and obligations of participants like within the blockchain ecosystem, right? So, I mean, because before that, there won't really be any certainty that you can bring to businesses, but also investors or basic network participants within the ecosystems, right? Because right now, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty revolving phrases like cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, I mean, decentralized applications. You touched a little bit upon it, Katrina. I mean, when is an application decentralized, right? I mean, I think we are talking to a lot of projects coming in at Concordium who wants to do a grant application, want to review that process. And then we really deep dive into it and try to understand the decentralized nature of these projects. And sometimes we figure out there aren't really any, right? I mean, they're just throwing around them with terms like distributed ledger technology, and then they heard about that they might need a fungible token, but there's no really real-world utility to this token. Then it doesn't really make much sense, right? I mean, if you don't need a decentralized smart contract to facilitate certain stuff, then I mean, it really needs to bring overall value to your project, right? And we put a lot of projects under scrutiny for this, and in the end it's a good thing, because then we actually end up figuring out what would make the most sense, right? I mean, it's the same with current Web 2 businesses. If they want to explore the potential of blockchain technology, sometimes they contact us and then they don't really understand the innate qualities of the blockchain, of the technology, and then they have all of these great ideas and really creative about what can be done. But at the end of the day, it actually only makes sense to put a few components on chain, right? So I agree with you there. I mean, I definitely think that there's a little bit of confusion, and a lot of people there needs to be a bit more education in this space, and people in this space needs to be better at explaining it in a less technical, buzzwordy way, and then do it through real-world use cases, right? Yeah.
Building on the previous discussion about the importance of legal frameworks and real-world utility, Fischer shifts focus to the role of existing Web 2.0 companies in this decentralized space. He poses an intriguing question about their capacity to adopt these decentralized technologies and whether this transition lies in the realm of blockchain or in another emerging technology. Let's hear his insights on the implications of mainstream brands adopting blockchain.
We also need to sometimes remember that what's important for the adoption of this decentralized technology is also when some of these bigger brands, right, they actually enter into this space and they use it. So for instance, I don't know if you all remember, but back in September, it was a pretty big deal when Starbucks started to use Polygon network, right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people in my circles who didn't know about blockchain technology, didn't know what an NFT was, what a digital collectible was. I mean, they never really heard these terms before, but because of Starbucks, now they had. Because then they saw it in the newspaper, they saw it on whatever social media platform they're using. These news all of a sudden start flourishing, right? And then people some ignore it, but it also sparks curiosity in a lot of new people, right? And then there's a lot of newcomers, and then they start to read about the technology, and they start to read about, I'm curious on why would a player like Starbucks enter this space, right? And I think there's multiple cases of this where you have these bigger brands that enter in, and some of them succeed, and some of them also don't, right? Because then you don't have a proper strategy involved. But I mean, basically the way that Starbucks did it, right? I mean, because they didn't really phrase it as decentralized technology. For them, it was more what they say Web3 technology, right? Because it allows the users and members to access experiences and ownership on stuff that wasn't really possible before, right? So there's definitely some, what can you say, you transcend these foundational benefits that the current rewards programs from some of these bigger brands had, which digital collectibles and loyalty systems and some of these can alleviate and enhance, right? And I think, some of that is very important, because if we do at one point want to, what can you say, really get industry adoption and integration, it's brand like these that needs to enter to begin with, right? Because otherwise it will be difficult to entice the masses, and it will be difficult to get people to really understand what this is all about, right? And that's also right. Morgan, you can probably relate to this. We have a few NFT marketplaces building on top of Concordium at the moment, and we have one called Space 7 as well. They just did it was fun. They did an NFT drop a month ago about with this big Iker Casillas, a big goalkeeper, football player, right, in Europe, and playing for Madrid for a long time. And before that, they didn't really had a lot of adoption. But then after that, it brought in so much attention, because you then bring in people that has a lot of followers, that has a big reach, and then you sort of use them as a catalyst to maybe get people's curiosity, right? And I think that's very important, because otherwise you can have the best technology and you can have the best value propositions, but if you don't really get these sort of wins from big brands and big personalities, it's difficult, right? So yeah.
Holger now takes us to the other side of the coin, addressing the potential downsides when brands engage with blockchain technology simply to ride the hype wave without a tangible use case. Yet, he also shares an exciting real-world example of how Concordium's technology is being used by a state-owned enterprise to foster transparency and credibility in the realm of green energy. Let's listen in.
There's two sides to it, right? Because I mean, when you are in this space, as we all are, sometimes it can also be a bit annoying with these hype just for the hype's sake, right? I mean, then you know that some of these brands goes into just for the hype. There's no real world use case, right? And that's where it gets a little bit annoying sometimes, because then it seems a bit fluffy. And then it's not really about what the decentralized technology is about. Then it's about riding that hype wave of this new disruptive technology without actually using it. So in that sense, I definitely agree with you, Katarina, because that is a poor point. But I mean, let me just give you a quick recap of something. I mean, because at Concordium, we're very focused on some of these real world use cases. And we actually have what you call a state-owned company, a transmission system operator, building on top of Concordium. And basically what it is that they use this blockchain for is to contribute to the Danish transmission systems with a green energy certificate platform, right? And the central element is the solution is just energy certificates, right? So, I mean, on a granular level, when you link the production of energy with consumption, right? So, I mean, it's a registration method for power production and power consumption that has been developed. And then you actually, for the first time, makes it possible for all companies that uses electricity that comes from this TSO to document exactly how much of their power consumptions come from a green, sustainable power source, right? Which is really important, right? Because then you can combat stuff like greenwashing. And this is a class AAA example of what a blockchain and a permissionless system should be used to create transparency and to enhance credibility, right? Because so many organizations out there, they are doing greenwashing, right? They're saying that they're green and they're saying that they're carbon neutral, but they're not at all, right? Because there's so much scam and stuff done with some of these carbon credits. So what do? Well, you register everything on a blockchain to begin with, right? And that is a real world use case that people can actually relate to, but it's not as exciting as Starbucks, right?
Shifting gears, Holger ponders over the remarkable potential of blockchain technology in addressing one of today's pressing issues, data privacy. The concept of self-sovereign identity is brought to light, showcasing how decentralization can empower individuals to reclaim control over their personal data. Concordium's work in this space exemplifies the transformative potential of blockchain in creating a more secure and private digital world.
It's so important sometimes to also take a step back and then look at where we are right now and say, okay, what exactly about decentralized technology can alleviate some of the biggest problems and biggest hurdles right now, right? And now that you mention it about decentralized data storage, right? I mean, something that I think blockchain technology can really help with is decentralized self-sovereign identity, right? Yeah. I mean, so because currently we see this all the time, right? You have decentralized federated identity management systems which are used to manage digital identities, right? So they store all of your personal identifiable information in central databases everywhere. And I mean, here we talk about emails, usernames, passwords, everything, right? Login credentials that you use to Google, Facebook, YouTube, everything, right? But I mean, the beautiful thing about actually having self-sovereign identity, I mean, having your own data, own personal identifiable data in your own wallet, on your own phone, and then be able through zero knowledge proofs, like as a cryptographic method, to through access points log in on and get access to certain decentralized applications or certain websites or whatever it would be, right? Because then you don't store your information anywhere else. You keep it in your own wallet. So there's so much data privacy issues that you completely eradicate, right? I mean, there's so many problems out there right now in Web2 that you completely eradicate by doing it like this. And I think, I mean, this is something that a lot of people actually aren't aware of. But blockchain technology and decentralized technology can empower individuals to have complete ownership and complete control over their data, right? And I mean, what individual wouldn't like that? I mean, I don't think I would meet an individual person who wouldn't want full control, full ownership over their ID and their personal data. Everyone wants that, right? So I think, but of course, the technology is maybe not mature enough yet. I mean, where I work at Concordium, we're really working on this with self-sovereign ID. So go check it out. It's really interesting. But I think that is one of the things that will actually also create mass adoption, because that is a pain point. That is a hurdle right now in Web 2. And that is actually a problem that Web 3 can easily solve, right?
As we delve deeper into the realm of decentralization, Holger addresses an intriguing conundrum: the double-edged sword of decentralized technologies. On one hand, governments can misuse this technology for excessive control, demonstrated by China's extensive use of central bank digital currencies. On the other hand, these technologies hold the promise of financial inclusion, capable of revolutionizing access to financial services for the unbanked. It's a delicate balance to strike and a fascinating dialogue to engage in.
We see this in a lot of controlling more governmental parts, where they actually try to slow down adoption, right? They try and legalize their way out of it. I mean, so just before you take over, Bob, I mean, that is a very, very similar thing that we see a lot of places, right? And then, as you also can say, if you look at China and the social credit scoring model, if you look at how they would want to use a central bank digital currency, I mean, I would take a step back and say that technology can also be used in too much of a controlling way, right? There's definitely some good aspects of it, but too much of a controlling way where you completely eradicate and get rid of everything that's personal free movement, right? Because they can freeze your accounts, they can do anything they want, basically. So then they really take power away, right? So I mean, this technology can also be used not for the greater good, but for something that's actually worse, which is more control. Just a quick clarification here. I didn't mean any stereotypes about anything. The only reason that I use China as an example is because they are actually the country in the world who's furthest ahead on the development of the central bank digital currency, right? I mean, it happens at a persistent low adoption rate, but they are by far the ones who has the most central bank digital currencies entities in circulation, right? And I also think I just read an article the other day that it reached over 250 million wallets. I mean, that is also an impressive statistics now that we are talking about mass adoption for decentralized technologies, right? But it's also interesting, right? Because then we're talking about a central bank digital currency as adoption for decentralized technologies. But I mean, I work a lot with decentralized finance where I come from, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the first thing I always talk about when I talk about DeFi is, and I think you mentioned it as well, Katrina, is financial inclusion, right? Removing the need for intermediaries, such as banks, financial institutions, and enables individuals, or we refer to them a lot as the unbanked, to access financial services, right?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about suppressed regions, developing countries, I mean, where they lack the necessary, it could be identification documents, access to traditional bank, just access to traditional finance infrastructure, right? But then you can bank these people and you can provide them with these tools, decentralized finance tools, right? And I mean, but that is a whole nother side of it, right? So, and again, that goes back to what we started to talk about in the beginning. Sometimes we also get a bit lost in the narrative, right? And we get a bit lost on what actually constitutes decentralized technology and when is it not decentralized technology anymore. And I think that is an interesting discussion to have as well.
In the wake of the bear market, funding for innovative projects becomes a challenge. Holger gives us a glimpse into the obstacles of raising capital in a recessive market and the resulting impact on technological research and development. Let's hear him explain how this environment is affecting projects building on Concordium and beyond.
It can be very challenging doing a Series A, even a Series B right now, right? Raising capital in this market. The overall valuations of these projects are 10-15 times less than what they were 1.5 years ago, right? And that is also because you don't set aside a lot of money for research and development when there's a recession, right? Or if you're close to entering into a recession. It's more about staying afloat. It's not about looking into what new, exciting, disruptive technologies are out there that can disrupt your whole business model, right? So, I mean, I definitely agree with that. We experienced that with a lot of projects building on Concordium as well, actually slowing a bit down because it's difficult for them to get a capital injection. It's difficult for them to find VCs who want to throw money after it right now, unless they really have a good value proposition and really also experiences user adoption in a bear market. Because that is the real impressive stuff, right? To get user adoption in a bear market. That is difficult.
Is there a meaningful intersection between AI and blockchain, or is it all just hype? In the final segment, Holger discusses this fascinating juncture. He highlights the value blockchain can bring to the AI landscape, from bolstering data integrity and trust to aiding in the detection of deep fakes. Let's dive into his insights.
You can use blockchain technology to sort of, what can you say, give data more integrity and give it more trust, right? Because a lot of these large language models, a lot of these NLP algorithms, they are trained on data sets, right? And you need you can use the blockchain here to sort of ensure that you have data integrity, to ensure you have trust, right? Because there are so many problems around that right now. So you can create full bulletproof audit trails, which is really important. And you can validate certain data sets, which can be really important, right? And that is one way for blockchain to sort of, what can you say, create a more safer digital world with the use of AI, because it sort of facilitates a more safer use of AI, right? And also, if you mentioned ChatGPT, there are so many deep fakes out there right now. Yeah. Pictures of people that aren't really those people, voices of people that aren't really their voice, right? But there you can use an identity solution on the blockchain to tag the person, and then every time the real person that's speaking, then you know it's the real person. Every time it's a deep fake, then you know it's a deep fake, right? So I mean, blockchain technology can and will be used as the underlying technology to ensure safe use of AI. And I think that is the real story here, right? So we should just jump on that hype wave, right? And I think it's a great addition to the question, Katarina. What can blockchain do for AI as well, right? Yeah. Because I think that it's a potential marriage made in heaven, with a lot of use cases only being discovered now, right? And I think that is one of them. Yeah.
To wrap up things, Holger circles back to the beginning, underscoring the importance of regulatory clarity in the blockchain landscape. He highlights the importance of regulatory sandboxes, particularly as implemented by the EU in fostering development and adoption of blockchain. Before we proceed to Holger's closing thoughts, I'd like to kindly remind you to consider delegating to Baker 85223. Now let's turn our attention back to Holger.
Okay, but I'll give a final remark as well. I only learned a couple of months ago that, for instance, the EU, where I work, where Concordium works as well, MiCA Marketing Crypto Assets, they just launched like a new regulatory blockchain sandbox for projects to go in, test, develop, build, and then they are really being taught around how stuff should be done to gain legal clarity, right? You should go check that out. That is pretty cool, because I think these test environments and sandboxes is really what will drive organizational, institutional adoption, right? Because it will then be done in a proper way. Bit more of a geeky last words, but yeah.